And welcome to the Ron Johnson Discipleship Podcast,
where we are committed to wearing the same shirts for consecutive podcasts. No, just kidding. We aren't wearing the same shirts, but I'll explain that in a minute. But we are here to help you grow and to help you become the disciple that Jesus has called us to be, and really to declare His lordship over every aspect of our lives. And I joked around about the shirts because we're in the studio today doing extra work in anticipation of my schedule. I have the chance. In fact, when you're watching this, I'll be somewhere coming back from Pakistan, where we will be declaring the lordship of Jesus and extending a Christian worldview and helping preach the kingdom of God in all of its fullness to some very dear friends of ours over there overseas. So anyway, we're doing double work today. We talked about maybe taking our shirts off, but I guess we're going to avoid doing that.
Well, I didn't want him to rip my shirt. Just when he puts on my shirt, the seams are popped.
No,
so I'm like,
Andrew, you're so kind. You're so kind. But anyway, last week we told you we were going to be kicking off a series that is based upon a wonderful book by Dr. Henry Cloud called Integrity, the Courage to Meet the Demands of Reality. And then he talks about 6 essential qualities to determine success, whether it's in your business, your ministry. I think it applies to every arena of life. Yeah. But let's get into the first essential, which is establishing trust.
Yeah, build trust.
Building trust.
And to me, this is like the foundational alpha characteristic for leadership. Because you can build leadership 2 ways. You build leadership through, I won't even call it leadership. You can get people to follow you 2 ways. One, through tyranny / manipulation, coercion.
Yeah.
If you don't do it, I'm going to fire you. If you don't do it, I'm going to kill you. If you don't do it, I'm going to put you in jail.
Yeah.
Which is not godly leadership at all, right?
Right.
Or you do it through building trust, which is to me, that's really what leadership is building trust. You think about the church, right? Like for someone to come to my small group or someone to be a volunteer leader or most things we do. I mean, we have some people on staff, but most of our leaders, by and large, most of our leaders are not staff, right?
Right. They're volunteer.
They're volunteers. So why would they follow us?
Right.
Why would they come on time? Why would they perform? Why would they follow our directions? It's not because we offer them anything of monetary value, right?
Right.
It's because we are actively building trust. If they don't trust us and there's not connection, they're just going to go, they're going to leave.
I think of the guy that, it's a slightly different application, but I think it applies here. The guy that said that he doesn't invest in businesses. Mm-hmm. He invests in the people who run those businesses. Yeah. In other words, you don't just look on your stock portfolio and go, I'm gonna buy this stock because it's a great, well-known company. It's a name brand company. No, companies don't run themselves. Yeah. Companies are run by people. And this guy says, I only invest in companies of which I know that the leaders of those companies are people full of integrity and people that I can believe in. It's the same way in the local church. This is the most, trust-enriched environment possible because at the end of the day, as you said, people are not going to follow leaders that they don't trust. Yeah. So, when it comes to having high integrity, loving people well, leading well, these are the foundational things that we'll get into for in other words, if you want to establish and build trust among your employees and your company and your church and your leadership in your life group and your marriage, what does that look like? Right. And what are the component pieces that are involved in building the trust?
Right, and we got to hash that out. We're going to lay out the specific of building trust. But I want to just emphasize, like, in many ways, building trust revealed whether you're a leader or not. When I was working as in the school corporation, I found a lot of my students, they said, I would rather talk to you than my therapist. I'm like, well, why is that the case? Well, because they're paid to do it. You're not paid to do this. You see that difference?
So they recognize
that
person was there listening because that's their job.
And that might not be true. The person might be really caring, but because of the financial piece, the students were maybe hurt or they were cynical, whatever. They disqualify them because of that. Right. So there is true power when you're leading people without any other incentive except that they trust you. Right. And I want to ask you, if you're a business owner, do your employees follow you because you're their boss and you pay them their paycheck, or do they follow you because they trust you? Wow. What a good important question, because at the end of the day, you don't want people, right, who only do what you tell them to do because they have to, because there's a paycheck attached to it. You want them to do it because they truly trust you. Wow. So
and kind of the things we talked about last podcast, they're enriched by you. They grow when they're around you. They know that they're loved. They're invested in. Yeah. Those are all things, again, that establish credibility.
So another way to think through your business or as in our ministry or whatever you want to call it is we are in the business or we're in the ministry. Our action staff are building trust. Everything we do should be building trust.
That's
building
good.
trust.
And he highlights one of the cornerstone traits, I guess, or qualities or things we need to develop is the quality of empathy.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit. What is empathy, and how does that establish trust?
Well, that's the first step. You got to actively practice empathy. Now, I know that word's been thrown out a lot, and people make memes making fun of it and all that kind of stuff. Sitcoms making fun of all, but as I dive,
because it sounds soft.
It sounds soft. It sounds like woke, cushy, or whatever. But as I dive into it, I realize, wow, the idea of empathy is really it's a godly characteristic. I mean, Jesus practiced empathy, but empathy basically is when I'm listening, it's different from sympathy. Sympathy is saying I feel sorry for you.
Right.
Empathy is I'm going to go and try my best to come into where you are sitting from and understand your perspective.
Right.
That's completely different from sympathy.
And this is such an odd quality in the workplace because everybody in the workplace is focused on getting a job done. Mm-hmm. Not on how you get the job done. It's really about finishing, about time clocks, about production. And so a lot of times we don't have time to sit down and say, well, Andrew, how are you feeling today? Or what's really going on in your life? Or talk to me about this, because we're so driven to get things done.
Right. And then you learn, if you keep operating that way, you're task-oriented, your company will explode because no one has any relational connection. And companies, at the end of the day, is made of people. And there's no empathy, there's no building trust, there's no connection.
It's not a healthy culture.
You're not going to grow.
And so you're going to have this massive back door with people flooding out because they don't feel like anybody knows them, cares for them.
Or you have people who are stealing, people who are not led well, they're unmotivated, they're wasteful, their time and energy, and just you end up not being efficient and productive. So empathy is, I'll be the first one to admit, like, empathy is not one of my strengths. It's probably one of my weaknesses. I don't know how many times when I was dating my wife, and even early in my marriage, my wife says, you keep telling me my feelings are wrong, my perspective is wrong. Even if it's wrong, can you just understand where I'm coming from?
Wow.
And I said, no, because you're wrong. I don't need to understand where you're coming from because it's wrong. And I don't remember how many times I told my kids, don't feel that way. Those feelings are wrong. Right. All those things I'm like, I cringe at all the times I spoke those words.
Because as soon as you declared those words, the walls went up, the trust went down.
I didn't understand empathy. Yeah.
So even in that marital thing, husbands and wives are different. That's how God made us. We're not only different physically, we're different emotionally. Yeah. We have usually opposites attract. So now you come together, and what you're saying is one of the key things to establishing trust in a relationship is to hear your wife out, listen to her, hear her heart, seek to understand her. In other words, like you said, step into her context, and then begin to understand her. Once she feels like you care enough, I care enough to understand her, then we establish trust, and there's more sharing and there's more communication.
Yeah, and I think the first step is to recognize that we aren't practicing. I'm not practicing empathy right now. When I'm saying stuff like, I don't need to understand you because you're wrong, there's such arrogance to that. But even outside of that, my brain has not locked onto empathy. Yeah. You have to. So the first part you have to be intentional.
Yeah.
If you're not thinking, I've been in conversation with people, and the whole time listening to them, I'm just thinking, I'm going to defeat the argument. I'm going to argue that one's wrong, that thing's wrong, that thing is wrong. I'm not even listening. Right. And I have to be intentional to shut that off and say, I need to understand.
So he gave a great example of a merger taking place and two different divisions or two different companies becoming one company and having a big meeting, and the CEO was up there, leading. Yeah. And then it came to question and answer time. And one woman just shared, really what she was saying is, there's been a lot of people that have uprooted, that have moved here, that she was all about the relational. She was like the mother hen of her area.
Her division,
And she was concerned about these people's lives, disruptions, sacrifices, etc. And the CEO, just all he heard was, is this going to impact my division in this way? And he said, no, it's not. Basically, don't worry about it. It's fine. It's not going to be good. And what he failed to do was to step into this woman's, the questioner's life.
Yeah.
And he could have said, help me understand better. What are some of the things you're concerned about? Help me understand better. And if he would have just shifted from giving the solution, which is what men are good at.
Right.
Men like to fix things, right?
Right.
So I'm going to fix it. No, I'm going to assure you everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
No, that's not, what your scenario that you're thinking of is not going to happen. So let's move on to the next question. He just absolutely deflated that woman, where if he would have just simply tried to connect with her at her level to let her know, I understand why you're concerned. I understand why you feel, or help me.
Yeah.
Either I understand or please help me understand.
Right. Or say, hey, it sounds like you're really concerned about your employees, and I appreciate your concern for them. I'm concerned for them
I'm
also.
concerned too. Yeah.
I care about these guys who have uprooted themselves for this to take this job, and now there's a crazy transition.
And is there a future for me in this company?
Absolutely. That's helping with those concerns. You know. I mean, I cringe just even hearing that because I feel like I've done that a million times. Just
we're not sitting here as the experts. We're just highlighting.
No, I'm recently learning how important this is to connect with people, because I want people to empathize with me. Yeah. So sometimes your own pain, and then you realize, oh, I'm doing the same thing to other people. So you have to be intentional. There needs to be a button that comes off in your head and says, it's time for me to practice empathy, especially for those. Now, there are people with that gift. Like my wife practices that gift all the time. That's her default.
Right.
That's not my default. Most men I've known, that's not their default. Yeah. They're problem solvers. They want to deal with the issues and not empathize.
So intentionally maybe step back with the people that we're working with and say, hey, tell me about your day, or how did that make you feel? Yeah. Or man, you must be concerned about that. How can I serve you? How can I help? That goes so much farther in loyalty and commitment and production and everything, and keeping your team as feeling like family and not just, I'm just a manager, or I'm just a cog in the wheel, right? So anyway, be intentional about it.
And the second part is you got to practice humility, and we talk about that all the time. In this context, it just means you have to lay down your agenda. I mean, how many times I go into the discussion, potentially argumentative, especially with my wife or other people, and I know I'm right already. I know that this is the right way to go. So I'm not asking any questions anymore. Or if I do ask questions, they're not questions that I really want answers to.
Well, and I'll bring this up. Sometimes when you're the leader of whatever it is that you're leading, you are responsible for making the final decision. And when you listen to somebody, you might have more information, or you might be seeing from 40,000 feet where this person's only seeing, they're in the weeds. Mm-hmm. And so you might have other information they don't have, and you might be right. I mean, we can't assume that we're always right, because that's a prideful blind spot, but sometimes you might be right.
Right.
But you still need to hear them out. You still need to listen. You still need to validate what they're feeling. And you need to thank them for their input, and you need to let them feel like they've been heard. Yeah. Nobody wants to feel like, why bother going to pass it around? They don't listen to us anyway, or nothing will change. Those types of, I've heard those types of comments before, which I sit there and I go, that's not really true. But it's true in that person's mind for whatever reason. Right. And it's my job as a leader to hear them and to make them feel heard, and that their opinion does matter. Although at the end of the day, I still have to make a decision.
Well, I'm going to jump to the next point, is making sure they felt heard. And I've seen discussions in which people are like, well, I heard them. Well, but the other person didn't feel that way. Right. And there's an art to again, I think most people can go into a meeting and not have to have their opinion taken, but to have their voices not heard is completely different. Right. And I think we need to make sure people feel like they're heard. They feel like their voices are actually heard.
We talked, Marion and I talked a couple of weeks ago. We had the privilege of sharing at marriage class. Mm-hmm. And we were talking on the larger topic of intimacy. Mm-hmm. And I don't know of anything that destroys intimacy faster than when one spouse feels like they're not heard. They're just trampled over, they're steamrolled over, they're not even asked for their opinion, or decisions are made in a marriage when the other spouse is not included in that decision-making process. These are all things that just simply say, you're not valuable, you're not important, I don't even recognize you, you're not important in my life. And those are devastating as it relates to establishing trust.
And this leads to like a good listening skills. Again, I feel like I'm talking like elementary school. Everyone, I was just at our color class, and they're like, when I'm talking, you're listening.
But you shared last Sunday in your message with Alethea, your daughter. Yeah. That was such a part, and we've all, I'm not exposing your dirty laundry here because I got my own.
I shared it on Sunday.
You shared it. But I thought, share that again, because she basically was saying, hey, Dad, you're not practicing good listening.
This is not good listening skill. If I'm just like, okay, yeah, that's not good listening skill.
Yeah, daddy, and you're looking at your phone.
You know, like basic stuff like eye contact, like basic stuff like, hey, you know what, like engage, listening, like shutting the phone off. You know, making sure we're not interrupted. Go on a walk together, being focused in.
How about this as a skill? You know, Andrew, let me make sure I'm understanding what's really on your heart.
Is this really what you're saying?
Is this really what you're saying? And you restate it, and then you're going, yeah, that's exactly. Or no, you're still not getting.
No, that's
not it at all.
Like all that. I mean, the story I share was my daughter. She was young at the time, like 3 or 4 years old, just kind of just chatting along and just trying to get my attention, tell me about her day, which honestly at that point I didn't really care about.
Yeah, you were thinking about
I was trying to unwind, come tired from work, whatever. That everyone can relate to that. And she grabbed my head in her hands, turned me towards her. To look at her eye contact and said, stop saying yeah, and listen to me.
She literally grabbed your face with her
turned
hands.
me, yeah. And it was amazing. I felt it was a Holy Spirit moment because the Lord told me, if you lose her heart now, you're not going to get it back.
Yeah.
This is the age when she needs to know that she has your whole heart.
And this is really what we're talking about. Whether we're leading a church or whether we're leading a business or whatever, it's not just about having people's heads. It's having people's hearts.
Yeah.
And if you have their hearts, they will follow you into battle. They will go after those record-setting, marks that you've established as goals. When their heart's there, the task is easy when their heart's engaged.
Absolutely.
If we lose people's hearts, then they're just going through the motions.
Yeah, I heard this amazing teaching on head and heart talk a while ago, and I don't know if it's completely accurate, but I thought it's kind of fun. He says, we often use head talk to heart talks. But let me switch that around. So, for example, like if someone says, you know what, like I'm really struggling with this task, and what is really heart talk. They want to feel like they're not alone. They want to feel like you got their back. But you say to them, you use head talk. You said, hey, this task, well, it's easy. All you got to do is A, B, C, D. You give them all the solutions, which they probably already know. So you miss them completely.
Right.
Now let's turn that around. If someone wanted a head talk and you give them a heart talk, it's ridiculous. Like if I say, hey, Pastor Ron, what's the direction to get to Jewel Osco? You're like, Andrew, you must feel so lost right now.
I feel your pain.
You feel your pain. Like, I don't care. Just give me the direction.
Give me the direction.
Hey, what time is that meeting? Oh, I remember that one time when I got lost. I don't know what time this meeting was. It was so hard. Let me connect with you. No, I don't need an empathy, man. I just want to know what time it is.
To be at the meeting.
That's ridiculous, right?
Right.
But on the other flip side, we don't think it's ridiculous when we respond to heart cries and we give them facts and information.
That's good.
And we don't think that's ridiculous. Whereas it's just as ridiculous, and people walk away completely disconnected. So leaders need to have the empathy to be able to realize, are they looking for facts? You got to read between the lines. And husbands, I want to give you a hint. Most of the time when your wife comes to talk to you, now there are times when my wife is like, what time's our meeting? Or put me the calendar, the schedule on the calendar. That's head talk, I get that.
Yeah.
But 99% of the time it's heart.
Yeah.
And we need to disengage our mind, and we need to connect with the heart. And our kids too.
And I felt, sometimes as a pastor, a lot of times we're in situations that are painful. Someone's funeral, a death, a hospital situation, a marital breakup. In those situations, it has been proven, with studies that what the person is not looking for are facts. Oh, you know what? This is what I did when I was. No, sometimes just your physical presence and just your hug and just your silence and just being there is all that they need. And I've noticed this in my marriage. Sometimes my wife just needs a hug. She just needs me to hold her. She just needs a kiss. She just needs to know it's going to be all right. And that gets you over the hump, and it gets you through. And most importantly, it establishes, hey, my husband's a safe place I can go to when I really need help. He is a safe place. And that should be the same place in our places of employment. If you manage a group of people, is your office a safe place? Is your heart a safe place where they can go and just say, hey, I'm really dealing with this? It might not even be work related. It could be completely family, kids, whatever related. Sure. But are you a safe place?
Yeah, and I think a lot of times people think, oh, what I get walked over. I mean, there's still boundaries in place. You got to establish proper boundaries.
Right.
But I think if you have the right perspective, to understand, look, this is really the primary ministry, or this is really leadership development. This is really this is the reason why I'm here. I think that gives context to everything, you know.
I think the larger issue, like, you know, someone might be saying, well, you know, my job as boss is not to be a therapist. We're here to get a job done. In fact, I'm here to get a job done. If I don't produce, then my neck's on the line.
Yeah.
I mean, I get all that, but I think what we're trying to say is if we will operate in integrity and realize that we're dealing with people, not just an employee, but with people, and if we can connect with them at that empathy level, let them know we understand them, love them, they're going to be a much better employee.
You're going to have the best employee. I mean, the message I crafted a couple weeks ago on Psalms 139 about being known, the gift of being known.
Great message, by the way. In fact, go to online on our livingstone.org, to our media page. Listen to that message. It was a great word.
God has given us the gift of knowing us deeply. And I really think we ought to give the gift as best as we can. When we're incomplete, we cannot never replace God. But to give that gift of knowing to the people around us, to our employees. You know, when I talk to the guys from Beaton Bow Homes, the guys from Texas, I mean, their leaders' main priority is to lead and to know the guys underneath them. It's not task oriented; it's people oriented. Because
if I work for you, you're my boss. Your focus is going to be on knowing Ron Johnson,
knowing, extending the gift of knowing.
My wife, my kids' names, my birthday, what I like, what my hobbies are.
I was talking to Joel D, and he was saying when he went to the Beaton Bow conference, Kingdom Work down in Texas, his table leader told him he had a situation in which he talked to his leader, it might be Rick, and said, hey, I'm struggling with this guy not performing or whatever issue was. And Rick basically says, but do you know this guy's name, the kid's name? Do you know his kid's? No, I don't. Well, go get to know his kid's name. Wow. So he went.
So here you got the presenting problem.
Yeah.
But really the deeper problem is you don't have enough relational equity with that employee to help them get through whatever the stumbling block is.
And I will even venture, because we talk about, well, what about boundaries and accountability? They would be too familiar and they won't listen to me. I think about the people who are under my leadership. The people who I've practiced to give the gift of knowing more to, the people I have worked to empathize with more, they're people I have no stress and no fear in correcting.
Or challenging.
Or growing. It's the people who I don't have a great relationship and I'm supposed to go and do confrontation or do something like accountability. That's when I struggle the most.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying? So this type of relationship has to lead to greater accountability, greater correction, greater growth. Because without accountability, you can't have growth. You need to be pointed out what you need to grow in. That's what accountability is.
That's good. So we got to be intentional. We got to be humble, because you have to realize it takes humility to come low to get into somebody's world.
Yeah.
The third thing we just talked about here is you have to be a good listener. And then talk about the next one.
Yeah, we talk about being felt hurt. You make sure the person felt hurt. And I think we need to understand invalidating someone's feeling is so destructive to them. And this is something, okay, so as a kid, I remember taking a test. I still remember this memory in elementary school, or maybe even younger. I don't remember. I got a bad score, and my friend who just said, "Hey, don't worry, be happy." And he, though he had good intention, I think it was when that song was pretty popular. He started singing that song. I want to punch him in the face, right? Because Henry Cloud says you're hurt twice. You're hurt because of something that disappointed you.
Right, you were hurt because you didn't do as well as you wanted to on the exam.
I'm disappointed, and I'm hurt second time because my friend says your feelings don't matter. Right. Just be happy. Right. Just be happy, you know?
Right. And you're not understanding my disappointment and my struggle right now.
You're saying your feelings are stupid, they're invalid, they shouldn't exist.
Right.
So I think we need to be careful to not confuse saying don't be led by your feeling, which is legitimate, and that's growth. And we need to train our kids to not be led by their feelings, to don't feel this way because you're stupid and you're wrong. And those two things we get confused all the time. Yeah. I have to learn how to communicate to my kids very well. I legitimize and validate your fears, but let's overcome your fears.
Right. Instead of stop being afraid, or God hasn't given us a spirit of fear. We can even quote scripture
at people. Yeah.
We can say, hey, what are you dealing with?
Yeah.
Why are you afraid?
Yeah.
And then help them cross the bridge to faith.
Right.
But you can't just cross the bridge and leave them on the other side feeling stupid or embarrassed or shamed because of their feelings.
Bible verses at people, man. I never work well with me when people throw. But if they knew me and they've talked with me, they processed with me, and they say, hey, I was praying for you and this verse came to mind. I want to throw that your way.
Receive it.
Oh, man, that's completely different from someone who's just like, oh, here's a verse. You're like, you don't even know my problem.
Yeah, or this is one of my pastoral frustrations. I'll see you on Sunday and I'll say, hey, Andrew, how you doing? How was your week? Praise the Lord, brother. Everything's great. When I might even know it hasn't been great, or even just my question. Sometimes I'm asking the question, but I'm not really wanting an answer.
Yeah.
That's the other side of it. So I ask you, but then I'm moving on,
Right.
and I haven't taken the time to humble myself to really get into your world, to take the time and initiative to go there. So it goes both ways.
Because this does take time. This does take time.
So hey, let's forgive one another, and not if during this podcast you're thinking about somebody who's been your greatest offender, you're missing the whole point. This is for us personally,
absolutely,
not to apply it to your spouse or to your boss or to somebody else.
Don't use this as a weapon against your husband. Exactly. Get some phone calls.
That will not age well, right there. All right.
Well, the second part to build trust is vulnerability. So talk about vulnerability a little bit. That's kind of
yes, vulnerability. Especially as a leader, we're taught that you share up, you don't share down. Especially in the church, we have created such a toxic culture where if a leader is vulnerable and sharing any imperfections, any struggles, any hurts or pains. Talk about cancel culture.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the fastest way to find yourself out of a job spiritually is if you're actually vulnerable and authentic with the people that you're leading. But just the opposite is true.
Yeah.
When a leader says, you know what, I've struggled with that too. Or, when you stand up in the pulpit on Sunday and you preach and you share not your successes only. I mean, people need to hear successes. But when you share your failures, then there's a sense of people identifying with you as a leader and go, wow, Pastor Andrews deals with that too? Yeah. Wow, I can be vulnerable with them. When I shared that just several weeks ago in marriage class, the Holy Spirit just led us to where I ended up sharing a story about God dealing with my anger. Mm-hmm. And it really broke me. And I just shared complete transparency about earlier days in my marriage with my kids when I was stressed out and frustrated, and I created an atmosphere in my home that wasn't healthy. And the Lord said, you're the problem. It's not your kids. You're the problem. And I just shared that. And it was through tears. I mean, it was still raw, And then I said, how many of you in this room are dealing with anger right now? Would you stand with me? Yeah. Not would you stand, but would you stand with me? Yeah. Because these are sins that are destructive and that we need to identify and that we need to get freedom from.
Oh, that's good.
And I was operating at that point from a place of freedom myself.
Yeah.
I wasn't operating like I just chewed out my kids before I got here. Who wants to stand with me? Right. And that's talk about that a little bit because that is counterproductive if we're not being vulnerable from a place of victory.
Right. And Henry Cloud made this great point. He talks about how true vulnerability that leads to building trust. There's two components to it. You're vulnerable enough to be able to connect, but you're strong enough to inspire them. If you're just
nobody wants to identify, that guy is, you're still dealing with sin X, Y, and Z.
Well, let's stop about pornography. It's a rampant disease in our culture today. Yeah, I struggle with pornography. So if I share, hey, guess what? We struggle with pornography. Just this morning before I came and preached the sermon, I was looking at porn this morning, and that's all I'm praying. People would be like, what the heck is going on, right?
Right. No one's going to go, man, Andrew inspires me.
Right. But if I say, hey, this has been a struggle for years and years, but you know what? For years I've been seeking the Lord, and I seek counsel from other men and accountability, and even though I was in my pits, but it was so dark, but the Lord overcame, and we pushed through. So there's a connection, because people don't like to talk about what pastors generally talk about pornography and addiction and struggle and whatever. But then this is a huge issue in our culture today, and there's a real struggle. So you share your real struggle, but you share about how we can overcome through the blood of Christ.
I think of some powerful services we've had at Living Stones where various women have at times stood up and said, hey, this is part of my past. When I was 18, I got pregnant. I had an abortion. Yeah. And, you're sitting there going, wow, that lady? Yeah. And look at her now. She's a godly lady. She's ministering to other people. God's redeemed her marriage. And you go, wow, it gives you the freedom. We're at our encounter weekends when they hear our leaders talk about, but they're sharing from a place where this is where I was. Right. This is what happened. This is what God did to heal me. And now I'm ministering out of a place of strength. That establishes great trust.
Great trust. And I was sharing this principle with a bunch of young leaders in our common ground, some of these guys. I said, look, so here's the deal. You can be vulnerable, But if you want to be a leader, you need to overcome. If you struggle with pornography,
Yeah.
you better overcome it before you start helping other people, overcome it, right?
And
if you struggle with whatever sin, there is a degree of overcoming you need to have to be a leader. Let's not sugarcoat this.
Right.
You're not like super broken and then going to be a leader. No. You have to overcome. I have to overcome pornography. I have to overcome other anger, whatever issues.
Character flaw, yeah.
I have to deal with and overcome.
It's the same in our marriage. I mean, you don't go back to your wife and say, "Oh, honey, I'm sorry, I just exploded on you for the 1,000th time."
Yeah, right.
She's like, "Please, keep your apologies."
Right.
Right. Or I repent. No, you obviously aren't getting it because you continue to do the same thing over and over and over again. So there has to be, as you said, a degree where we're serious enough about whatever our blind spots or weaknesses are to where we actually move to a place of victory.
Right. But at the same time, you share about where you were, you share about the struggle you had, but you have to be strong enough to inspire people. Is that combination that truly builds trust?
Yeah. It's not like, let me jump in the pit with you and we'll wallow in here together.
And just, that's a pity party.
Yeah. We need to be strong enough to reach in and pull people out of the pit.
But you're also not a Superman who's just like, I have never lusted after anyone before.
I've never dealt with any of the sins
anger, whatever. I don't understand any of those. I have a perfect marriage, and people are like, I can't connect with you.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it was Charles Spurgeon said, if you want to be a successful preacher, preach to people's pain.
Yeah.
In other words, identify with where they're at. Talk about the pain that they're going through. Have empathy for who they are and what they're struggling with, and you'll always have a crowd.
Yeah.
If you preach, I've been in victory all my life, and I've never experienced defeat. And let me tell you how you can live in victory all your life. People you're like on an ivory tower, and they're just like, wow, they might have respect for you, but they don't have trust for you because they feel like that dude can't relate to my real life.
Well, that's good.
And I think that's the criticism of a lot of people in the church, a lot of pastors, is they see somebody as so unapproachable and so unidentifiable that they go, well, that guy up there in a nice robe and a gown and preaching the these and the thous, and he obviously can't relate to me. I'm a blue collar guy out here with guys in the steel mill. You should hear their language. You should see what I got to deal with. Right. There's a great disconnect, and they feel like they can't really identify with that dude in the pulpit.
Right.
So it is important. I think we really try to foster a culture of authenticity here, because we value trust, and we know without trust you can't raise up great leaders.
No, that's good. And I was going to mention one other point is this combination of vulnerability and strength is really, we find embodiment in Jesus Christ. It's hard to relate to Yahweh.
If Jesus came just as the Son of God, we'd all go, well, he's the Son of God, right?
But he was fully man. Yeah. And he went through his struggle, his brokenness. He never
tempted
sinned.
In every way as we are.
Yeah, hunger, thirst, without sin. But he was.
And maybe that's it. I was just thinking about what we were talking about. What a beautiful phrase that captures the tension. Tempted in every way, yet without sin. That's why we can trust him. That's why we are inspired to follow him. He identifies with our weaknesses and our pain. Right. But he's not in our weakness. In fact, Jesus, as we know, was sinless. He took everything on and won. Now you can celebrate and follow a leader like that.
Absolutely. He's not unapproachable. He's relatable. He was a carpenter. He was a blue collar guy. He was hungry. He was thirsty. He was struggling in prayer.
He got tired. Worked long days. Got frustrated.
Got frustrated and flipped tables. Godly frustration.
That's not sinful.
Not sinful. Yeah. But again, like, it's hard to relate to Yahweh. I've been reading Exodus, and just like the cloud on the mountain and lightning is like I can't relate to that.
Theologically, we talk about the difference between transcendence and immanence. Transcendence being God is so above us, so not us, so beyond us. He's holy, right? He's unapproachable in that regard. We talk about his communicable attributes versus his non-communicable. That his transcendence is something we don't share. Yeah. But then we talk about his immanence, God coming near, God becoming one with human nature, right? Living among us, taking on human flesh, the incarnation. And that's the nearness of God. So we got the farness and we got the nearness. And I think that's the tension that the cloud's trying to address as leaders. Right. Don't be so ivory towerish that people can't relate to you, living behind your closed door and you're unapproachable. But also don't be so close or near that people have no respect for you, or you're still dealing with the same messes that they are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's got to be that tension in between.
So Jesus came, preaching empathy, demonstrating empathy. But it's not just Jesus. Paul and Peter and all the patriarchs, all the people in the Bible. I mean, the Bible clearly shows their flaws. They overcame, but they were struggling. David, just all of his Psalms. Yeah. So building trust by practicing vulnerability in the correct way.
And we're in a series now on the Psalms, and I think that's perhaps one of the reasons why the Psalms are some of the most beloved portions of Scripture, because people can relate to a leader like David, a man after God's own heart, and yet he was certainly not without flaws. And how many times did David deal with being afraid, feeling like he was alone? God, do you hear me? Are you listening? He dealt with all the insecurities and struggles we deal with, and yet he modeled for us how to live a victorious life, and how to really put his faith and confidence in the Lord.
No, that's good.
And boy, what a great tension point to struggle with here. So lastly here.
Just real quick, last one. You practice building trust by giving favors, by really just looking out for people, blessing them, honoring them.
And, he talks about doing business with somebody. Of course, in business, you have a written contract. It's good to spell out expectations and all that. And we recommend that. But he says, okay, so let's just say something shifts. Like, okay, the price of lumber skyrockets.
Yeah. Never happened. Never
nothing
happened.
like this time now, though, right?
Yeah, right.
But you got a contract.
COVID hit, yeah.
And so in this situation, I'm going to be the big winner. Yeah. Maybe I'm the supplier of lumber. You're the purchaser. Yeah. But we have a long-standing relationship. If I have integrity, I'm concerned about you winning with me, not a win-lose situation, or I'm going to really score on this contract because Andrew's going to have to pay 50% more in lumber prices. I'm going to score. Right. That's really not treating you as a partner. Right. It's treating you. I'm really a
contractor.
I'm preying on you.
Yeah.
And guess what? The shoe might be on the other foot someday. Sure. So if I have integrity in the relationship, I want you to, and I'm looking out for you. Yeah. Talk about that point. I mean, I thought that was such an incredible point, that when you really have integrity, I know I don't have to guard my back. Right. You have my back.
Well, that's what he says. One of the, I forgot what word for trust is careless.
Careless.
Careless. Yeah. So it sounds like, you're careless, you're knocking things over. Not that careless. So when I'm around you, I don't have to, my spider sense is not up. I'm not like watchful. I know that you got my back. So I don't have to look over the contract. Again, contract is a good thing. I'm not saying that, but I don't have to be like, hey,
letter of the law.
Did you put some random clause in here? I don't have to worry about that, because just now when I roll a contract with Sean, he's my realtor trying to sell my house. Like, I didn't even read it. Why? Because I trust him.
Right. He cares about you. He loves you because you have a relationship.
Because deep relationship. Now, I'm not saying don't read contracts. But in this case, we have such deep relationship, I trust that he has my best interest in mind. That's what it means to be.
Yeah. I just think how many people, and even in Christian business, it's more letter of the law. Yeah. Even people approach that in terms of their relationship with God, the letter of the law. I read my Bible. I prayed. I gave I always find people, it's kind of humorous to me when we talk about tithing, of course, giving a tenth. So if somebody's paycheck is, $1,723.32, I get a tithe for $17.32, which, it's like, at least like, be generous, round up to the nearest dollar, But that's kind of a letter of the law approach to giving. Yeah. Right. And again, I appreciate the fact that you are going to give a tenth, but a spirit of generosity, a spirit of grace says, don't follow the letter of the law, follow the spirit of the law, which is always exceeds.
And I think, if you're a brother in Christ, instead of, if you're whatever business and I want your business, instead of asking for a discount because I'm a Christian, why don't I pay you even more? Yeah, bless you even more, because you're worth it, and
because I care about you.
Because I care about you, and that's how you extend. How you break trust. Oh man, I don't want to work for a Christian business because every time I work with them, or I don't want to work with Christians anymore because they all expect me to give them a discount. It's like, I can't do that. I can't sustain my business. Yeah. Versus, I want to work with a Christian because they bless me, they tip me extra, they give me, that's what it means to build trust. Yeah, extend favor.
And what a kingdom thing that you and I can have such a degree of trust that I literally trust that when I'm not there, or there's a decision that needs to be made, you're actually thinking about my best interest.
Yeah.
And I could be careless in the sense that I could care less what's going to happen because you're caring about me. And you know, too, I'm caring about you.
Yeah.
He gave the example. I thought this was so good about an employer who renegotiated his employees' health benefits, got them a better coverage for a lower cost, and then took the money that was saved, gave it back to them. So when they had their employee gathering and your CEO says, oh, by the way, you're all getting better health insurance. What? Our leader was thinking about our health coverage and trying to give us better coverage? Wow. Oh, and by the way, here's a check back to each of you on the money that we saved. Instead of us keeping it, we're going to give it back to you as a bonus. Now, what does that do to that employee's sense of commitment to the company, wanting to do a better job, caring about the well-being of the company, caring about the company's success? I mean, it goes off the charts because the trust level just went out the window. Because what it said was, you were caring for me when I wasn't even thinking about caring for me.
Yeah.
And then you went above and beyond and gave me money that you could have just quietly, you didn't have to tell me that you saved money or that you got better coverage for less, right?
Yeah.
You could have kept all that silent.
Yeah.
But you, by sharing that, let me know that you're not only thinking about me when I'm not, but you're also looking to take profit that was made and give it back to me.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Talk about kingdom.
Yeah.
That is revolutionary. And what does that produce? It produces trust, which is what we're really trying to talk about today.
Absolute trust.
So final word on trust.
I think the final word is building trust is really, really hard. It is really hard. It's not instinctive. It's not instinctive to empathize, to listen from the other person's perspective. It takes time. It takes energy. I have to reorient my whole perspective towards my day-to-day in my current position right now and the pastor, to change my mindset, change my scheduling up, because I realize I have to make when I meet one-on-one with my direct reports, with the people I work with directly, I'm trying to build trust with them. I just know that I share on Sunday, I can't give that gift of knowing to everybody. I realize I just can't. Yeah. If I try to get to know everybody, I know nobody. Yeah. I help no one grow. But if I can be laser focused on just a few people, again, it's just a change in mindset. You have to really get how important this is and how valuable this is. Yeah. But when you really empathize and you listen, you focus, man, the growth is tremendous. Yeah. So
this is what's so counterintuitive about the kingdom, is the soft stuff, the spiritual stuff, the warm fuzzy stuff, the relational forgiveness and all that. It seems like that's unnecessary to a business world where it's all about the bottom line. But what we're understanding is, if you don't take care of your people and you don't have a right culture, you're going to be spending money,
time, energy
that you haven't even dreamed of. Just replacement and dealing with relational fallout and conflict,
frustrations and
lawsuits and how much of
waste
how much waste is rooted in simply mistrust.
Yeah, absolutely.
I even think of the certain workforce versus the us-them mentality in so much of business today, where everybody goes into arguing and fighting because it's all about
ownership versus workers.
I'm going to get the best I can possibly get. I'm going to squeeze every bit I can, because I know you don't care about me. All you care about is making money, but I got to care about me. I got to fight.
It reminded me, there's a story in Good to Great. I think they're a great steel company. And when the unions try to come in, those guys says, no, we are aligning ourselves with owners, because guess what? They all are. The company is employee owned. So they are the owners. They have aligned themselves, the majority of owners, so much that it was just like, we don't need representation. Yeah. We're good. There's such trust there.
Yeah, not that we're trying to be anti-union, but even look at the union, the labor relations between management and union. That starts from a contentious standpoint. I automatically start recognizing you're the enemy and you don't have my best interest, which is why we have to unionize. To make sure that we cover our bases. And what would happen if we just brought kingdom into that situation?
Yeah, we're not knocking union, because this is on both sides. The employer is not building trust,
Exactly. Yeah. That's why unions were created in the first place, because of all the abuses or whatever.
Trust,
but just think of what kingdom does when you come and say, as an employee, what can I do to know you, to know your concerns as a boss?
When I win as a boss, you as an employee win, and you can trust me that when we make money, you're going to make money too.
Right.
Man, how cool would that be?
This is not just a fairy tale world. This is actually the realm of the kingdom, and this is the realm you can live in, and we can begin implementing
they're
this.
practical action steps for you to say, look at this list and be like, how can I be more intentional today? How can I be a better listener
So
today?
think about it personally. Think about it in your realm of relationship. Think about bringing home really close to, like, if you're married, to your marriage, to your spouse, to your children. I've gone before my kids before and said, please forgive me. I didn't handle this correctly. I was authentic. I was vulnerable. I said, let me tell you how I feel, but tell me what's going on in your world. Why this behavior? Why did you act this way? Why did you do this? This is how it made me feel. Forgive me for, yelling, raising my voice, whatever. And I instantly see a coming together when that happens. Oh, Dad, you were justified in what you did. I shouldn't have done what I did. I was selfish. Or, that's how your relationships get healed and how trust gets established on the most basic level of, marriage and family.
Absolutely.
So anyway, good stuff, kingdom stuff. It not only works, but it produces great blessing. And we pray that you would be blessed this week. So let's go out, reestablish trust where it needs to be reestablished. Be a person of integrity, empathy, vulnerability. Make sure that in all your relationships, the people that you're working with, they win and you win. And if they work with you, they can be carefree because you care for them. All right, have a great week. We look forward to getting back next week on our podcast to talk about the second core essential to establishing.
Give them a little teaser.
Yeah, come on, tease them.
The ability to be oriented towards the truth, to not see, to see past your blind spot and face reality.
You won't want to miss it. Lots of good stuff with lots of applications. So we'll see you next Thursday.